Some people feel a bit worried that they will go khutbah. I'm not going to khutbah. I have no khutbah on Friday actually. No, I just thought I'd start with the name of Allah. I hope we get blessings for the evening. Allah shouts blessings for us. It's really important. Well, good evening everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Really good to see you all. Really good turnout again. You always turn out in live numbers to support the PMI event. We really, really appreciate it. I don't know about you, but I really, really do look forward to these evenings. We always get to catch up with friends, visitors, colleagues. We always have great speakers. The things that I always give my hat off to Javed Bashir is that he always manages to pull a rabbit out of the hat. We always have great speakers, very interesting speakers. I've heard Lord Nazir Ahmed speak before, and you are in for a delight today. Tonight will not be an exception. It will be very good evening. Okay. But we'll get to Lord Nazir Ahmed in a few minutes. What I'd like to do is to give Lord Nazir Ahmed a flavour of the PMI organisation. So that's you guys in the audience. So for him to hear a little bit more about you. And to start that off, there's a couple of people in the audience. I mean, this thing's all about networking. It's about promoting us as individuals and us as a group of people. So we're going to give an audience to a couple of people, very briefly, just to speak out about what they do and about their businesses. So can I ask first of all, sorry, I didn't give you my name, did I? I didn't say my name. I'm Anams Restaurant. For my day job, I'm the Chief Executive Management Housing Association. That's why I'm here. Can I ask Rehan Ahmed to come forward and speak to us for 2 minutes? Rehan Ahmed.
My name is Rehan Ahmed from Kingston Business Recovery. We're a licensed insolvency practice based here in Bradford and in Nottingham. What that means is we basically help companies and businesses who are struggling financially. So that's whether with HMRC debts, banks, suppliers, any financial difficulties companies generally do have, we can offer them a solution. Most of our work is formal insolvency solutions, so stuff like liquidations, CVAs, admins, and other sort of formal insolvency solutions we do offer. So we can do the full range of insolvency procedures, as well as informal restructuring with companies, so when they need to restructure companies in certain ways, we can help them. Now, the way we work is we offer, we speak to clients, we offer them the solutions and the potential options that we do have available, and let them decide on where they need to go and which route they need to take. At the end of the day, most companies at that time of their life cycle are going to be financially a lot of stress, but we don't really be forcing them into a position where they will feel, you know what, that was the best option at that time. So we'll let them decide. So if you know anyone who needs any financial advice, give a chat. Do companies, and we also do individuals as well, sole traders and partnerships. So any financial advice, give a shout. That's Rihanna from Kingston. That's Rihanna. And can I now ask Yunus Luna to come forward and speak about his work in this country?
Jazakallah for the opportunity to speak this evening. I think you're going to be thinking, you've got somebody that's trying to rescue your business from probably a heart and now you've got a lawyer. I specialise in employment law, probably the last two people you want to meet in your lives, so I do apologise for that. So my name is Yunus Luna, I deal with employment law at Firming Leeds for License Paris and I head up the employment law department. What does employment law involve? Employment law, I describe it as similar to a marriage, because when that relationship breaks up, there's a lot of bitterness and a lot of hatred that comes out. Very, very similar to how a marriage terminates at the end, and it lingers on and on. So what I try to do is, and I've tried to work a lot with Asian businesses in terms of educating our businesses, so that we're upfront, you avoid that situation arising. The relationship at the start, like a marriage contract, let's have some procedures in place, let's have a contract there. Because the problem when I've been doing this for many, many years, and the consistency I see see when I'm dealing with our businesses is we don't have any policies there, we don't have procedures there. A lot of times I get people saying, look, I don't even know how many days holiday I'm entitled to or I'm not allowed to. So we're always firefighting, we appeal before tribunals. Unfortunate common theme is that there just isn't a lack of process there. So we firefight. The impression we give to a tribunal before we appear is a negative one. And it's all about perceptions and that. So in terms of recruitment, how do we recruit people? What are the processes? Have we got a track record there? There's any challenges across the recruitment. In terms of the relationship itself, how do we deal with the day-to-day activities? What's my role? What's my responsibilities? What do I do if something goes wrong? If I'm unhappy, what is the process? Unfortunately, a lot of times, you see with businesses, if I raise a complaint, the next thing is I'm out the door, and you guarantee there's a claim, a dismissal claim there. What if I want to discipline somebody? What if somebody's done something wrong? Unfortunately, a lot of times what we see is do not pass go, get out the door. But the process there, disciplinary procedures, how do you give a warning? What is sufficiently serious to terminate somebody's employment without any warnings? You know, you can't dismiss for every misdemeanor. So all of these, there are processes in place, and it's about following these processes, so that even if you get something wrong, even if the business is wrong at the end of the day, it's mitigated, the penalty is mitigated. So that's what we are trying to do, is work with more and more Asian businesses, because as we are good business people, undoubtedly, but it's about the perception we give out there, and the question then is, in terms of bidding for tenders, one thing I always say is, why are we unable to bid for big tenders? The answer to that is because unfortunately we don't have a lot of the processes in place, the paperwork that looks nice to enable you to take that step forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yunus. I hadn't stopped you being going off for England there. Okay. How many people have come to the PMI event for the first time today? It's quite a few people. Where have you guys been? We've been doing this for 3 years. No, it's very nice to have you. You're very welcome. And because there's so many people in the room that are going to a PMI event for the first time, I'm just going to take about a minute and a half just to tell you a little bit about the PMI. So hopefully, in terms of what you hear about the PMI, what you experience tonight, that you will then come more often, and then you'll be well supported of the PMI. That's what we require. So PMI, in terms of a professional Muslims Institute, is dedicated to the overall achievement and advancement of professional Muslims in the United Kingdom. The PMI is committed to develop the next generation of leaders who possess the skills and aspirations to create social change within their organisations, communities and society at large. That's you guys. That's in front of you. The PMI was launched at a high-profile event at the University of Bradford at the House of Lords. And every few months, the PMI has a dinner as we're having today, where we get, as you can see, about 150 people. And we create opportunities for people to network together, meet each other, promote themselves, promote their businesses, which is what you've just seen. So don't be frightened to do that when we have the break later on. Talk to people you've not met before, make sure you've got plenty of business cards together, and network. That's what this evening is about, life is about network. Now, before I get on to the main item on the programme for today, we have got a very special guest with us today. That is Mr. Mohammed Taj. Mohammed Taj, can I ask you just stand up to show yourself to the audience? Okay, Mohammed Taj is a bus driver from Bradford, and he's been active in the trade union movement for a long time. He first got involved with the Transport and General Workers Union, now part of Unite. When he began to investigate complaints that Asian workers had to pay a bribe, this is Bradford, not Pakistan, to pay a bribe to corrupt union officials and managers before they could get work on the buses. As a result of his work into unjust practices throughout the company, there was a court case and several people were arrested. Now, the reason why I've introduced you to him tonight, and why he's here as a special guest, is that he's just been elected as the president of the TUC, and he's the first Muslim to hold that national position. And it's really good that you can be here today so that we can acknowledge that achievement and can celebrate that achievement with you. And when people in the community achieve such accolades, it's really good for the rest of us because we can derive some satisfaction and some inspiration from that. So very well done and congratulations. Let's give another round of applause. Okay, so now we come to Lord Nazir Ahmed.
Don't say anything bad.
I won't say anything bad. You've never done anything bad?
Not yet.
Okay, I mean, Lord Nazir Ahmed doesn't need an introduction, but in order for me to earn my supper, I'll give him an introduction anyway. Okay. He's been active in politics for a long time. He was a member of the Labour Party at just 18. He was elected in 1990 as a local Labour councillor. He was appointed to the House of Lords in 1998. He speaks widely on issues of equality, on race, religion and gender. He has advocated for legislation against forced marriages and against religious discrimination. In November 2007, a lot of you may remember, he was involved in diplomatic efforts that resulted in the release of a teacher called Gillian Gibbons, who, if you recall, she was held in custody in Sudan because she allowed the class to name a teddy bear Mohammed. Many of you remember the case. Now, Lord Nazir has been asked to come here today and speak to you about his work in politics and about the Muslim community generally engaging in politics and how we can use that to influence things for the betterment of our community in this country. And I think many of you will agree that it's one thing that we can learn lessons from other communities. We're not as good as other communities in this. And it'd be good to get an insight from somebody like Lord Nazir Ahmed on this. Lord Nazir Ahmed.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Mr. Ansar Ali, Javed, Bashir, Taj Saab, Mohammed Taj, my brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. I was going to deliver a khutbah and that's why I got stuck with the surah because I was wanting to rush and because Ansar said that he wasn't going to deliver a khutbah. I think it's appropriate and right to deliver a khutbah because you have chosen a very important topic, which is Muslim participation in politics. Let me first of all join with Ansar Ali in congratulating Mohammed Taj for becoming the president of TUC. It is not easy, I tell you, because when you come from a ethnic minority community as a bus driver, somebody who's worked in TUC for a long time through his own unions, and to become the president, I think he makes us feel proud. It's important that we talk about politics, but how many people here, because there's half of you who are new to this event, the PMI, I have to confess, I had to ask my friend AD Saab, what is PMI and what do they do in Bradford? So I don't know whether you know what a peer of the realm does. And if you don't know, don't worry, because one of our senior members went across to the hospital at St. Thomas's to go and talk about the House of Lords and the work that we do. And she's very senior and she went round to each ward, and then she visited the old people's ward where she went and talked to them, hello, how are you? And then she went to this lady and said, hello, how are you? And the lady said, I'm fine. And then she said, do you know who I am? And the lady said, no, but if you go to the reception, they'll tell you who you are. Most of my colleagues in the House of Lords, an average age is about 75. So now we've got young ones, and we may be average age of 74. But there's nothing less than that. If you find anybody, that's it, you know. It's important to know about politics. I'm trying to once or twice I'll try and test you whether you're awake or not. So, this was just a starter. Long time ago, when I went into politics, it wasn't because I wanted to be a lord or an MP. Although my brother Mohammed Taj and I, we were on the selection panel here in Bradford when people were saying things that Muslims hate other races, they don't like other religious communities. And Bradford rejected both Mohammed Taj and myself and chose Masha Singh. So, obviously Muslims' perception is very different from what they behave and what they do. But what I learned right at the beginning, that political success for any community and economic success goes hand in hand. So it doesn't matter, I have to tell you, as Muslim professionals, you can go as far as you like. You think you are successful as business, or in business or in profession, but I tell you honestly, I can tell you, you will come to glass ceiling everywhere where you have to push it up. You have to push it up. And then you will come to some technical problems. And unless you have that political support from your community, unless you have that political support from others, or those who are making changes for you in institutions, and it doesn't have to be in power politics, it doesn't have to be somebody who's a lord or an MP or an executive position in the local authority, but you need to be there as a community. It's very, very important. So when Ansar Ali says that the Muslim community is not succeeding as much as some of the other communities, I have to say, quite honestly, we Muslims have done much better in United Kingdom than any other Western country. Muslims in Great Britain, and I've got to say here, Britain is one of the greatest countries in the world, which actually gives us that equality to do it. And yet there's racism. Dominic Greaves, I don't have to mention that, I'll come to it later on, what he said today. But there is racism in our society, there is sexism in our society, there is prejudice in our society, but it's the best in the world where people do talk about it. You're not afraid of saying what you believe in. And that's only possible because people have worked hard. And if you look at successes, we have now 13 members of the Muslim community in the House of Lords, 8 in the House of Commons, 300 to 400 elected local councillors, 1 MEP, and also executive mayors, whether it is Tower Hamlets or whether it is Burton-on-Trent. And there are leaders and deputy leaders from the Muslim community. This is not to say that Muslims somehow are different from the mainstream society. It's only because there are some people, and here I have to say that there are some deep-rooted problems and prejudices that are held, and sometimes deliberately by many political parties diverted, attentions, like UKIP these days. And I really don't want to mention English Defence League or British National Party or anything like that, but UKIP has become a respectable political party, and yet only last week, if you look at Lord Pearson, who was the leader of UKIP only until a couple of years ago, the sort of language he used against Islam and Muslims, and the perception, he said they breed 10 times more than us. Now that's the language that was used in 1920s against the Jewish community. And then what happens? So if you allow that sort of talk against us, then there is perception. You see, because we are visible minority communities. Most of you are born in Britain. Most of you are born in Bradford. And yet, if you have somebody from Eastern European countries here, they are not seen as ethnic minorities. They are not seen as somebody different, because they'll go to this church and they'll go to the pub and they'll do. But we are different from everyone else. And so therefore, we are the ones to be blamed for everything that goes wrong. So you need to have that political voice. And I think it's important that you are, and I really want to say to you that I don't belong to any political party. I've left the Labour Party now because of every time I open my mouth, then I was suspended. And it wasn't what I said, but it was because, it's not what I said, because I didn't say anything which was illegal, but every time I said that, because I was suspended, that made the news. And I really don't want to bring my community into disrepute, whatever cost. And I don't care whether it's the Labour Party or Conservative Party or anybody else. So it was right that I should step away, but continue doing the work that I do. So being in a political party, whichever political party you choose to be in. Now, in the olden days, when me and Mohammed Taj joined the Labour Party, it was the only political party that stood with us and understood and reached out to us. There were obviously many things that we agreed on. You don't have to agree with any political party 100%, by the way. As Muslims, there are many people who will say, well, you know, because we are Muslims, we're not allowed to vote there because the Labour Party sort of talks about gays and lesbians, talks about lots of other things that we don't. Well, you know, you don't have to follow 100%. This is not like religion. This is a political party you are joining, so long as the majority of your beliefs on what you want to achieve in terms of your community and what you want to see in your local community. That doesn't mean just Muslims. As far as I'm concerned, as a Muslim, you know, for me, my community is my neighborhood. You remember what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, that in Medina, he said, a Muslim has a responsibility on his neighbors. And when they were asked, the Prophet was asked, what is the definition of a neighbor? He said 40 houses on the right and 40 on the left. There were no streets in Medina with 80 houses on one street. So in other words, he meant the whole town, the whole city, your responsibility. So people feel secure, they feel part of the family. So you have to go and look after the elderly, you have to go and feed the hungry, you have to go and clean the environment. This is all part of Islamic values. And so as citizens, I'm not saying that we should have Muslims sort of wanting to do their own political activities alone, but part of the entire society. So, you know, some of the things that, apart from being in political party, in one political party, I should say that you should join Liberal Democrats, you should join Conservative Party. Some of you, I would hesitate, but if you want to join UKIP because you want to bring Britain out of Europe, but there are other things that come with UKIP as well. But it's a matter of choice. You can decide to be in any political party, or I forgot Respect, because Respect is also in Bradford. It's about to go, it's about but I don't want to say anything. I love George. George is my friend. So I and many of the Respect supporters. But what the point I'm trying to make is, any political party you want to join, it's very important that you should be in there. If you're not, that's not the end of the world, because if you work somewhere, then you need to be part of a trade union movement, and then you should pay political levy. You should be active in those organizations. You need to be in a bigger association or organization, an institute, or whatever that actually gives you a voice and a platform to be, so you are recognized that you are doing something. So whether it is in schools, in colleges, we should encourage our young people to join the college unions, and also debating societies. There's lots of things that our young people could actually join, and they are, but we need to encourage them to do more. I also think that we need to defend our young students too, because too often British media, and also there are certain think tanks that work 24/7, at least 10 of them I know, that try to demonize Muslim students. And so if you are a young white student of Christian heritage or Jewish heritage, you can join and talk about any sort of anything you want. You can talk about Israel, you can talk about Europe, you can talk about South Americas or Africa and some of the activities that you want to do, or human rights that are going, abuses that are going on. But if you're a Muslim and you talk about Palestine, you become extremist. If you're a Muslim or of a Kashmiri origin, and the minute you mention Kashmir, then you become we have to be very careful because we now have these extremists on our campuses. Now, obviously, we need to defend them to say this is all part of freedom within and I think a lot of people do understand that, but we need to be there to be supporting them. And then, of course, there are many interfaith organizations within every community. So we need to be part of those interfaith organizations. We need to reach out because, Islam is all about that. And because you are a professional Muslim institute, you have to remember the Prophet ﷺ, when he was only 15, 16 years of age, Half al-Fudul was actually an agreement signed in Makkah at a time when he wasn't a prophet. But at a time when the Arabs were fighting each other over smallest things, and he brought everybody together for equality, for justice, for fairness, for peace, and for communities to work together. So for us it is nothing new that we should reach out to other faith communities. And I recited this in the House of Lords, Javed last week, when I was challenged, well, not I wasn't challenged, but Lord Pearson talked about Muslims killing and Quran teaching them to kill and all this and the other and Al-Qaeda and everything else that he could say. I just reminded him that Mr. Breivik in Oslo was not a Muslim, and the young man who killed Muhammad Salim and tried to bomb 3 masjids was not a Muslim. But even Srebrenica wasn't done by Muslims. And in just 100 years ago, in the last century, First World War killed 16 million, Second World War killed 60 million. And then if you look at the Soviet Union and the Tsars of Russia and what they did to Central Asia and the population there, and then what the colonial Europe did in North Africa and Asia, then everywhere you dig after 10 meters you will find somebody, and that's not Muslims who've done it. But then I ended by saying, but my lords, the Quran teaches me that do not argue with people of earlier scripture, even if they do. Tell them that you believe in the same God as they do. And really that's what it is. Because I don't want to be aggressive. I want to say that what happened in history, please come and talk to me about facts. Don't just look at, Al-Qaeda and look today. When what amazes me is that Dominic Grieve talks about corruption in the Pakistani community in politics. I'm not saying that there isn't, please, but Volker scandal, Faisal will tell you, trade unions was also blamed. The scandal that went over there, nobody says it was white Scottish people who were fiddling. They wouldn't dare say that Scots are involved with this type of thing. They wouldn't dare talk. Okay, only 2 weeks ago, a Tory MP had to return his money because he was claiming for heating his stables. We don't have money to heat our old age pensioners' houses, let alone heating his bloody stables. Excuse my language. And so the reason what I'm saying is that if you were in politics, you could stand up and you could actually say, if you had the platform and you had the ability and also the way, because a lot of in media, I was telling somebody, from the day when I've been in the House of Lords, how media sensationalizes stories. And one story I will tell you, there are many, but one story I will tell you. One day, during the war of Iraq and Afghanistan, I was at Regent's Park Masjid for Jummah. Like all of us do, and I do it proudly. I am a proud Muslim and I don't care about anybody. whatever they want to say. I'm very proud Muslim. I go to masjid, and that's where I am connected. After the prayer, you know, when you have 4,000 people in a masjid with lots of people, you're bound to get 3, 4, 10 psychologically wound up people who have some problems. You know, this is kind of, if you have any doctors here, they will tell you, or any psychiatrists here, they will tell you. And some are sort of to degree. I mean, they're not mentioned immediately, but you know, they're going up. So like, I was surrounded by some of these people. Hey, brother, you are in charge. You are Tony Blair's brother. You are responsible for the blood in Afghanistan and Iraq and all that. And I thought, I said, you know, astaghfirullah, please keep calm, you know. And then one young man said, I have I'm on a tag, and I have my daughters, and I go to underground, I go to London City, I go on an underground, but I'm not allowed to leave after 6 o'clock. And there's nothing wrong, I haven't been charged. There is nothing on me, but can you please write to the Home Secretary and find out why she's keeping this? So I thought, because there are lots of people here, if I start answering in front of everybody, this is going to cause problems. So I said, why don't you come to the House of Lords? I'll give you an appointment now. Monday, 10 o'clock, I will see you there. So when he came, normally anybody who comes to the House of Lords, I give them a cup of tea and a scone. If there's any of you ever been here, scone, cream cake, whatever. For that young man, I didn't, because I thought, in case anybody sees me or him, that they could interpret this wrongly. And he's a young Palestinian boy. Psychologically, maybe had a problem. Anyway, I took him to a main public place where he sat down, like any councillor, like any MP. I took his details, and then I said to him, I'll write to the Home Secretary, which I did. Sadly, 2 or 3 days later, he was to appear before a court where he talked about his visit to see Lord Ahmed in the House of Lords. And the next day, every newspaper and the Sun had the front story. Al-Qaeda suspect, no, Al-Qaeda in the Commons, invited by Lord Ahmed for tea. And then later on, if you read on over the page, and then it says, Al-Qaeda suspect who's never been charged. And he went to see Lord Ahmed because of his problems, etc., etc. So like, you know, so we constantly get that. So when we get that, one of the things that you need to do is write to the newspaper immediately. What you need to do is to report them to Press Complaints Commission, and now this new, whatever, Royal Commission or whatever they've established. But you need to write to them, make a complaint about this. Every time you see something, write to Ofcom or email them. You know, these days you don't have to write a letter, just email and make a complaint, make a telephone call and make a complaint. Because you are the representatives, you are the voice for the Muslim community and those who are oppressed. And you know, I've got lots of things. Have I gone over my time? Because I just wait 5 more minutes. Well, apart from, you know, there are lots of issues locally. You know, you could get involved with environmental groups. Why is it, sadly, where we Muslims live, the area is never cleaned properly? Why is it that so much rubbish on the streets? Why can't we, on a Saturday or a Sunday, sort of do a big cleanup in our area? You know, buy 10 dustbin bags and get all the community and young people to go and pick up the litter, and have a local newspaper to come and photograph the activity that you are doing, because that sends a good message to the local community. Why is it that we Muslims, we are the most generous, one of the most generous communities in the world is the British community, the British society, and yet the Muslims are more generous than the entire British community. If you look at some of the donations, whether it was the earthquake, or whether it is the tsunami, or whether it was the Haiti earthquake, it's always the Muslims that give more. And of course, all of us give 2.5% out of our zakat as well, and sadaqah, and lots of money. I mean, there are charities. You know, British Muslim charities, they raise 50 million quid, more than 50 million pounds a year and they send it to Africa and Pakistan. I'm not saying India, Bangladesh, Sudan, lots of other places. I'm not saying that they should not, but let us ask them to spend 25% on British causes, to our local hospital, to our young people. In Bradford, that there is big crime. There is crime, whether it is drug-related, theft, robbery, armed robbery, prostitution, or whether it is underachievement of our children, where we could run Sunday schools or Saturday schools, where we could, each one of you are educated, you can bring young people together. Just teach them something, maths, English, whatever you can help them with. This is also part of the political involvement within our communities. Quangos at a national level deal with literally, tens of billions of pounds. I remember when we stood for elections, I used to quote 50-60 billion pounds at that time. I don't know, Taj Sahab might know the latest figure, what Quangos, which are unaccountable, but they're appointed by government, that they deal with that sort of budget, how much they are doing it now. But, our people need to be on the National Health Service boards and the other legal services boards and lots of other boards and services that are going on. Let me just now turn to which I think is very important, and because that's the biggest platform we Muslims have, 1400 mosques. Unfortunately, sadly, our mosques are not run properly. And one of the duties I was given after 7/7 by Tony Blair, now I have to wash my mouth, was to talk about Imams and Mosques National Advisory Body, which I did. But unfortunately, sadly, because some of the Muslim organizations who had self-interest didn't want me there, because I was supposed to be pushing things too fast and I was doing it on behalf of the government. And really, I can swear to by Allah that this wasn't my idea. My idea is, look, I can tell you, there is one Masjid Ansar Sahib in Birmingham. I don't want to name them here because it's going to be televised. They have £1 million in their deposit bank account for Gyarmi Sharif. Now, whatever my personal thoughts about Gyarmi Sharif are, but that £1 million ought to be spent on rehabilitating these 11-12% of Muslims who are in prison because of drugs and drug-related offences. If we could just do that as a community, then people would not be pointing their finger and saying, well, these scoundrels who collect social security and drive taxi at night and then go to a takeaway later on and then do it. The people, because we could then manage ourselves. Why is it that Pakistanis, I'm of a Pakistani origin, Kashmir, very proud as well. Kashmiri Pakistani, just remember, I'm going to test you now. Just remember, have you heard this Punjabi story that a Punjabi man that goes to Texas? No, okay, that's good. So, a Punjabi man goes to Texas and he meets with this Texan American guy and starts talking to him, hey, what's your name and what's my name? And then he says, so this Texan American guy says, so what do you do, sir? And the Punjabi guy says, I'm a farmer. So I said, oh yeah, so how big is your farm? So I said, from here to that tree over there. And he said, how wide? He said, probably just as much. I said, wow. So then the Punjabi guy says to the Texan American guy, says, so what do you do? And he said, I'm a farmer. So I said, how big is your farm? He said, I get up in the morning, I get in my car, I drive for 2 hours, and then I get to the other end. And the Punjabi man says, I know the feeling, I had a car like yours. So, coming back to our masjids, that unless we reform, because unless we have the Mamajis and Unclejis and Babajis who are running it, And they've done a great job. You know, please, I'm not trying to criticize them. They've done a fantastic job. We had the Maulanas who could recite very good poetry in Punjabi and Urdu. And they could really do the magic, and of course they can bring all the angels around you on Thursday evening. But now we moved on. We need something more realistic. Somebody who understands our problems, whether it is grooming, whether it is the drug problem, teenage pregnancies. People don't want to talk about it. Well, I do. Unless we deal with those problems, then our demonization process will continue, sadly. And so there's a lot to be said and there's a lot to be done. But again, I'm just sort of like even halfway, and I realize that I've run out of my time. I just want to thank you. I hope you have a nice food for me because I've spoken a lot. Thank you.
I give him a few extra minutes because not every day we're going to have Lord Nazir Ahmed with us. And as a consequence of that, we're going to cut down on the question and answers. But I think you would agree that it's worth giving Lord Nazir Ahmed that extra time for that. And we have the benefit of Lord Nazir's profound experience in politics. And he gives a lot of insight, a lot of food for thought. And some of the issues that Lord Nazir Ahmed raised are very profound. We talked about the number of Muslim prisoners that we have. I think 14,000 is the last figure. So it's something like 14-15% of the population, whereas we make something like 3-4% of the population. So this is a question that I raised earlier, which is, yes, we have some power. I mean, in Bradford alone, I think we have something like 15 or more councillors. But to what extent does that benefit our community? So I think that's the discussion that we need to have. Political engagement is okay, power is okay, but it's how we use that to benefit our community. So let's open it up now, let's have a really thoroughly good debate. I haven't got a roving mic, so if you volunteer to speak, you're going to have to shout a little, particularly if you're at the back of the room. So you can make any points that you'd like to make on this topic, or you can ask Lord Nazir Ahmed a question, whichever you prefer. And we have 10 minutes, so I think we'll get quite a few questions in. But if you keep it short and sharp, so that a number of people can speak. So is anybody there? Could you put your hand up? And I'll need you to say your name, and of course, please do give the name of the company that you're here representing with them as well. So is anybody in the audience who wants to start us off?
If you dare.
If not, we can go and eat.
10 minutes yet.
So let me start with Lord Nazir. So you talked about the comments by Damien Ray today. Why do he thinks he can get away with things like that?
Well, to be honest, Damien Green, I've always felt that he had a problem. His real problem is sort of the internal, and it is a problem with many old conservatives, you know, about racism. I just want to remind people, he said on the day that Pakistan, it is talking about Pakistanis, corruption within Pakistanis, not Indians. On a day when and I really don't want to criticize Indians, I'm just making a point, that it was the Indian couple who had the longest serving 3 house slaves in British history. And so he didn't mention anything about them, but he mentioned about Pakistanis. The case he mentioned was in 2008 in Slough. Now there have been at least 50 cases of parliamentarians after 2008 where MPs were caught red-handed with fiddling expenses, Lord's fiddling expenses. And of course you also had even, I don't want to say, you know, because these days defamation and all that with legal, if you've got some lawyers here, I know you are one right down. But I mean, Liam Fox, what did he do? Why did he have to resign? Because his chief of staff was selling his services somewhere in Sri Lanka, as I remember it. There's a lot of things that go on. So why did he do it? Because we are an easy target as a community to divert attention for anything that goes wrong in society. So as a Pakistanis are so easy for you to target, because in the olden days where you could talk about the Irish communities and joke about the Irish communities, now you do it, and before it was the Jewish communities, now you talk about Pakistani communities. And the truth is, because both Labour and Tory governments have allowed Eastern Europeans to come into this country, most of the problems that we see now in terms of local, in terms of, I don't want to list it, because people are now complaining about these foreigners, so they want to point their finger at Pakistan. And that's the truth, I think. But there's much more. That's the deep-rooted racism within these people. I personally think, and I think we should call upon not only the Prime Minister for his apology, but we should also ask him to sack him.
Okay, has anybody been encouraged to want to ask a question or make a comment? Right at the back there, we'll be right at the back, wouldn't it? So can I ask you to stand up so we can all see you, and you can ask you to speak as loud as possible.
My main question is, what's been the challenge for yourself as in person in school as in religious, and how do you found online? And the second question that I'm trying to ask you, how do you see we should combat drug crime? And I know that the name is Jim and part of the foundation and organizations and parties will be involved. How do you combat it?
Thank you very much. I think they are very important questions, the last one in particular. I honestly think that as a community we need to do more. As a community, that's why I mentioned the reform of our masjids. 1400, there is a already made platform for Muslims every Friday where thousands, hundreds of thousands of us go to the masjids. And then now we have almost a dozen TV channels for the Muslim communities here in the United Kingdom. We need to talk about it. We need to just look at what drugs and drug-related issues, what are they doing to our families, and also families of the victims. Maybe white, maybe black, it may be whoever they are, they're human beings. The lives that are being ruined because of drugs, theft that actually feeds drugs, robberies that feeds drugs, prostitution that feeds drugs. And this is not, I'm saying this, I mean, even if they were just white girls, they're our girls, but Muslim girls. And a lot of it, what I cannot understand, and I did an interview last week, is that there are so many leaders, self-appointed leaders in our community who know that their son has a Ferrari or a Porsche, or I have a Porsche, but I don't sell drugs, who has a big Mercedes, BMW or whatever, doesn't do any work, it goes out at night, ask them, what does he do? I don't know, but I tell you something, he comes back, he's got lots of money. But they should ask, what does he do? What's his qualification? Where does he get all this money? And I think that, community needs to ask as well. And so instead of naming, shaming, maybe it's not easy now. In Bradford, it's very dangerous because there are mafias who work together. Drugs is a ruthless business. And if you try to challenge them, they will physically, mentally, they will destroy you. And in Bradford and in this part of the world, everywhere. I must be, in fact, the last time I spoke against drugs in Bradford, one of my friends said, why do you pange kyun le rahe ho? Because people, these are dangerous people. And I think that if I don't do it, look, this is why I thank Allah that I wasn't selected in Bradford and I was made a lord. I don't need votes. I can say and do whatever I want and what I believe in. So, so I think, but we also need to run awareness programs. We also go out to communities where we see problems. We shouldn't just criticize them. We should work with those families and communities. And I've been in prison. Those of you who don't know, I was in prison for 2 weeks. And during that time, I used to meet with all, in fact on a Friday, we used to sit together at dinner time, lunchtime. I used to sit with them to try and understand. And a lot of them, honestly, they are really nice kids. They really are nice kids. They used to look after me anyway. Because if anybody said anything wrong, they'd say, "You said that to my uncle, I'll break your legs." And I was everybody's uncle. And but they're really nice kids. And when I sat down with them, they said, "Uncle, I want to change. I don't want to come back to prison. But I can't even go to masjid because they'll say, oh, chore hai, oh, drug hai. Oh, kapde bachao, chori kar lenge." We need to run real, and it's got to be based in masjid. It's got to, because that's the community center. The Prophet ﷺ didn't use it just for the prayer. It was for training, it was a gym, it was a social center, it was economic center, it was for everything. We need to change the way we run our masjids and, make it. Now, biggest challenge for me, I've had a challenge every month. And there are so many. People telling lies about me. And, they say there's all sorts of rubbish that goes on, in the newspapers, in the social media these days. But I think the biggest challenge for me has been because I supported the Palestinians, because I took the first delegation to Gaza with Claire Short and Jenny Tong on that boat. And I remember from that day, I shook hands with Ismail Hania and Khalid Mishal, and I have no regrets whatsoever, because Palestinians are deprived of their freedom. 1.5 million people live in the biggest jail in the world, in Gaza, and I will do whatever I can to talk about them and continue supporting them.
Okay, I think we'll end on that. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for your participation. I'd like to thank Lord Nazir Ahmed again. Now we can eat, and of course the evening's not over. You've still got a chance to get to know new people.